Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all, be worth it now, and that's for sure. Watch me as I rock a team, flying high.
Okay, welcome everyone to Fight Talk Down Under episode 19. Before we get into all the good stuff, I thought I'd just put this out there right from the jump. We're finalising our sponsorship drive. I think I say that every week, but if anyone's interested, hit us up. If anyone wants to support the podcast, support the local scene, let us know. Hit up myself or my co-host, who of course is Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden. How are you, mate?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. We're here. We're back at it again. Yep, as you said, people have businesses or sponsors or things like that want to sort of jump on. Let's do that. And other than that, just ready to talk about some fights and do the usual sort of banter and whatever comes, whatever pops into my head as we're doing this.
Absolutely. Well, we got plenty of fights to talk about, which is lucky because that's what we do. So we've got UFC 275 from the weekend. It's obviously a pretty Aussie-heavy card. We've got Rob Wilkinson in action this weekend, as well as Charles Joyner, who I interviewed. It's on the Fight News Australia YouTube channel, of course, as well as some other bits and pieces. So... we may as well get stuck into it. But before we get to UFC 275, road to UFC last week, we talked about this in episode 18. Sean Etchell was in action against Takeru Ishida of Japan. It was a non-tournament bout, and it was really, I guess, just to be on the radar of the UFC, and an impressive performance could possibly earn you a contract. I guess we don't really have that much information on road to UFC, to be honest, and what the implications are. But unfortunately, Sean Etchell seems to have had a bit of trouble making weight, just looking at the photos. He's missed weight on the first opportunity and made weight once his sort of extra 2 hours had expired, and I don't know if that had an impact on the fight. I think, Justin, you can probably give us a bit of insight into that, but he has lost by first round rear naked choke. He was on the back himself. He was sort of foxing for a choke of his own, and Ishida pulled off a pretty slick reversal and sunk in the choke pretty quickly. So what did you make of Sean Etchell's sort of weigh-in situation and his performance on the night?
Super unfortunate. Obviously, the result. I haven't gotten to talk to Sean yet, like directly about it. I thought I'd wait a little bit more until I'd ask him. But obviously, whenever you look at the weigh-in side of things, if a fighter doesn't make weight on the first go around and then has to do that extra bit more, naturally, you're gonna be that bit more depleted. You're gonna have to make sure your rehydration is a bit more on point, and it's gonna have an effect when you're in there. And I feel like looking at the performance and what we're sort of used to seeing from Sean Etchell, the pace we're sort of used to seeing, the violence that we're used to seeing, the pop on the punches, the sort of, forward motion, controlling the center of the octagon, all that sort of stuff just wasn't there. And I feel like, maybe that played a factor in that. Obviously, he had some moments and glimpses of sort of brilliance in there. Like you said, he had the back briefly, and it looked like he was sort of the man's strength come into play a little bit in certain parts. And Yoshida looked like he was, in trouble and didn't really have many answers for what sort of Sean was presenting to him. But obviously, we saw the tide turn fairly quickly, and once Yoshida decided to get on the back, it was pretty quick and pretty slick with sinking in the choke. And I guess once you're sort of maybe a bit compromised and someone does get on your back, and especially someone that's obviously very talented in that aspect, like we saw there from Yoshida, it was always going to be a pretty rough night in the office once you let someone like that get on your back and get under your chin. I don't know. For my money, I'm curious if that's played a factor, if the weight cut was real rough. I did see them in the lead up to the weigh-ins talk about the person that they were working with and saying like how it's made it super easy with the traveling to Singapore and blah, 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 blah. But, I look into those things a little bit and I analyze all these sort of things. And to me, when I saw that post go up, I had an inkling that there was going to be some issues with making the weight. kind of selling a few wolf tickets here and there because, you want to kind of put on a front in that aspect. So, if your opponent is sort of paying attention to your socials or his team or someone close to him, you make it seem like everything's all sweet. But yeah, I don't know, maybe it wasn't. But I'd be interested to sort of, talk to Sean about it and find out what kind of was happening. He's pretty sort of open dude. So, I'm sure he'd be pretty honest about the situation. And he was pretty good about it afterwards. I saw his post that he put up, and he's pretty good about it. He's like, oh, it's a hiccup, it's a minor sort of roadblock for him, but he's going to come back. He didn't make excuses, didn't say, oh, it was because of this, it was because of that. He was just kind of like, oh, it was, just didn't go my way, but we'll figure it out. We'll just get back there. So, that's probably what you want. And his team sort of had the same sort of outlook. So, I guess that's all you can take away from it. It didn't go his way, but he's not going to let it deter him. He's just going to keep going.
It is a bit of a roadblock, as you say. Like when you've sort of come that close, you've been right under the UFC's nose there, and obviously it hasn't gone your way in the end, and sort of the weight struggles and whatnot. So, like, how damaging is that to someone's sort of confidence or motivation to sort of come that close and fall short? Would that kind of light a fire under you, or would it take a little bit of time to maybe just kind of just gather yourself again before you go again? What do you reckon?
It's gonna depend person to person. For someone like Sean, it's for sure just gonna like motivate him to work harder and be even better and get back there and do it properly and kind of take advantage of what's there for him. But for other people, it could be like the sort of deciding factor to just pull up and be like, all right, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Hopefully it's not the case with him, but like I said, I suspect it's going to motivate him even more. But, when you get that close and you sort of done everything, you've been on a bit of a tear, and then something like that happens and the sort of things come together like that, then, you almost wouldn't be surprised if someone just kind of pulled the plug or took a step back or took a break for a while, even, just kind of sat back and went, all right, man, maybe I don't know if I want to keep doing this. So, I guess we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I think Sean, I don't know Sean, by the way. I haven't sort of met him or interviewed him. It's not for a lack of trying, by the way. We'll put that on record. But, I haven't actually met Sean. But he does seem like a pretty laid-back sort of character, like someone who would sort of take something like this in stride. So hopefully that's the case. And, he's, 28 years old, I think. So, there's still plenty of time in mixed martial arts. It's not, that's not an aging fighter. But also Ushida, certainly not an aging fighter, only 19 years old. So I don't know, what do you make of his prospects? Because I feel like at that age, he looks pretty physically sort of immature, I guess, is for lack of a better term. Would you throw him sort of back to maybe the Contender Series, or sort of maybe bring, if they're going to keep doing this Road to UFC events, sort of give him another go around on that sort of thing? Or do you reckon they can put a young fighter like that straight into the pool? What do you reckon?
Not at all. If they put that kid in the UFC, he's going to get washed out of the sport and deterred and just burnt out. He's just going to get destroyed. Because if you look at people that he's going to have to deal with at that division as a flyweight, fuck me, it's going to be rough for him to sort of think that they can just slot him in there. The same sort of thing happened with Chase Hooper. He got there so quickly, and just had like a minimal success, and then just couldn't hang. And now that he's aged a bit, gotten a bit older, he's filled out a bit more. Now we're kind of seeing him come to his sort of own and put on sort of better performances. Imagine, and flyweight being the division it is, say he does find a little bit of success, it's like a Sage Northcutt type deal. You get rushed forward a bit. Now you're standing across the cage from fucking, I don't know, name any one of the guys, Kai, Marino, Figueiredo, either one of them, that's a rough night in the office for that kid, because, those guys hit very, very hard. They're very, very fast. They're very, very big. Although flyweight's the smallest weight and experience, although flyweight's a small weight division, they're big for that, in that weight division. So, it'd be, and they're he'd be fighting some more experienced, more technical, bigger, stronger, grown men, as opposed to, someone that's on the same sort of plateau as him at the moment. So for my money, I think I'd like to see him just get built up a bit more. And then when he's starts filling out a bit more, then sort of, we'll talk about getting him in the UFC or something like that. But, that's not up to me. It's up to his team and what the UFC decide. But I just don't want to see a kid who's obviously very talented get completely burnt out and, walk away from the sport or find another avenue because of sort of something like that happening.
Yeah, I think we've seen quite a few examples, haven't we, in the UFC of fighters coming in sort of around that sort of 19, 20 years of age and maybe just not quite being ready, not quite up to it. Maybe it's just a little bit too soon in their careers. So, I mean, again, we don't really know what the plan is with the road to UFC. So maybe they just want to have a look at some fighters and just kind of stick them in the memory bank and keep an eye on them for a bit longer. I'm not really sure, but he's one to watch. Like he's just had a win against a really experienced sort of high level guy in Sean Etchell. So he's obviously no mug. So yeah, he can't be far off. But yeah, it would be good to see him get a few more years and just sort of fill out a little bit more before he was sort of thrown to the wolves. And I imagine that's what they'll do.
Yeah, 100%.
But speaking of being thrown to the wolves, I guess at UFC 275, we'll start with the first Australian who was on the card. There was Jacob Malkoon, taking on Brendan Allen. It looked like a tough matchup on paper for Malkoon, or at least a challenging matchup. Maybe not a tough matchup, but they were sort of giving him someone who was a strong opponent for Jacob, who was only 6 fights into his career, let's say. Now he's lost by unanimous decision. It was kind of an interesting fight, right? Like we know the Australian portion of social media was pretty up in arms about the decision, but we talked about this over the weekend, and I didn't think it was too bad, to be honest. I felt like Brendan Allen had more in the striking, and he did more damage in the end, and I think he did more with his control time at the end of the day. So what did you make of Malkoon's performance and of course the decision?
Yeah, I watched it live, and then I could see sort of, watching it live and obviously around people like other Australians, and you kind of want to see the Aussies do well. So you do sort of have that little bit of a sour thing going like, oh man, I think he got done pretty badly. And then I rewatched it, and I kind of felt sort of similar, but then I was like, nah, like let's watch this independently. Like, let's put aside the fact that he's an Australian fighter that we want to see do well. Let's watch it. Let's score it. So I grabbed a piece of paper, pen, started scoring it when I was watching it. And then, yeah, for my money, I don't think it was a robbery as people were claiming. I think Allen just did more. So he, it was a sort of warranted win. Jacob, had the benefit of he didn't really, come out of the fight too banged up. So he could probably go again real soon. It's just sort of a learning curve, really. I don't think it's sort of this big highway robbery that people are making out to be. You see clips of fucking Robert Whittaker walking around afterwards, shaking his head and being real upset. It's like, man, you understand that's your teammate and you're going to feel that way. But it wasn't as clear cut as sort of people think it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy for I guess their teammates and things like that to sort of have that kind of a bit of bias when they watch the fight. You always sort of, I guess you view, what your teammate does sort of more than, you observe what your teammate does more than what you observe the opponent perhaps. But I didn't think it was too bad. But I think Malkoon showed some improvements along the way. Like he had some success. The first round he really seemed to be struggling in the stand up. But once he got that jab going, he just landed it over and over and over. So I think that was probably something we haven't really seen from him before. He seemed a bit more willing to sort of stand up and test himself in that realm before he went sort of diving into a takedown. So I think he looked good. Yeah,
no, there's always going to be like little things that you can pick out. You got to still pick out the good things. So let's see how he rebounds from this. Let's see what they do with his team, and obviously trains alongside Rob. Rob's preparing for Vittori, so I'm sure if he's the type of dude that he's going to be keen to sort of back it up again. Maybe he'll end up on that same card. Get back in there and kind of rebound from it.
Absolutely. And apologies for before. I don't know if you heard my phone buzzing there. We're 19 episodes into this podcast, and I don't know how many times that has to happen before I finally learn my lesson. But one day I'll put my phone somewhere that it's not going to disrupt the podcast. So apologies to the listeners and to yourself, Lockjaw, for yet another buzz in the background there. But back onto 275. Josh Kulabau was next up against Sung Woo Choi. And again, another impressive performance there. He's won by split decision, which I don't know. The third judge, or whichever judge scored the fight for Choi is, probably needs to get their eyes checked. I think, because it was, I don't know. It felt pretty clear cut to me that Josh had won that one. So I think the split decision is a bit of a stitch up. But Josh looked good. he's won. Like he's knocked down Choi in rounds 1 and 2. And really, he dominated with the boxing. Like he was just accurate. He looked fast. He looked powerful. So, what did you make of Josh Kulabau's performance?
It was I give him like a 9 out of 10. Could have been better. Could have finished him in round 2. It's not like I had money on the fight, but we won't talk about that. No, I'm just joking. Obviously, it was good. Yeah, it's a killer performance. Man, these Korean fighters, bro. When their hero is the Korean Zombie, and he is such a legend, you can tell these fighters, man, just want to emulate that dude, because that dude, they're all so tough. They just don't want to fucking stop. They don't want to let themselves get put away. No one would have blamed Choi if he kind of threw it in and was just done after a few of those times when he got knocked down and some of the shots that he was taking. So he saw afterwards Josh had ice on his hands because they're obviously a bit busted up from punching Choi in the face really, really hard. So. But it was cool. It was a sick fight. I was pretty hyped for it, especially after weigh-ins when they had their little tussle at the weigh-ins. I thought, oh, this is going to be good. They're going to come out swinging from the start, and they did. And then, afterwards we saw that the sportsmanship was there. The guys were just having a bit of a laugh at the back and having a good old chat. So it had everything you wanted it to, except the decision was a bit fucking stupid. So should have for sure been unanimous to Josh. And I guess, I got to be realistic about the outlook on the fight too. I feel like, Josh has opportunities there again where the fight could have been finished, but kind of spent too much time admiring his work again. And I don't know, it's something you can't really speak for someone else. It's because you're not in there as them. But for my money, it just seemed like Josh could have finished the fight, but was just, admiring his work a bit too much again, like he was in the Shah Ilan fight, but definitely looked amazing, put on a killer performance, probably the best one of his career to date. And then, kind of put a stamp on him being in the UFC and being in this division. So now people are going to be sort of starting to pay more attention to him, which is really, really good. But yeah, I just feel like there's something there that's still missing. And I feel like next time potentially we could see him, whatever that is, overcome that and actually start putting these dudes away, because he's obviously, very, very talented, and he's doing the work and he's getting in there and, showcasing it. But I just want to see him reap the complete rewards of that, not just half measures.
Yeah, absolutely. And there certainly seemed to be, like you touched on there seemed to be some moments where he did kind of let Choi off the hook. And I guess there is a fine line between sort of being smart and sort of picking your openings and sort of rushing in to finish the fight, Like Choi is a dangerous fighter, so it's sort of, I guess there is an inherent risk with kind of just trying to blitz him and put him away, but he did seem to just kind of let him off the hook a little bit at times. But, that's only really a small knock in what's a really impressive performance. And he's had an impressive win against a tough guy on a really big card, which is... well deserved for Josh Kulabau. He's there would have been a lot of eyeballs on that card, so it's good for him to sort of get that win and really showcase his skills in front of a wider audience this time.
Yeah, now he's obviously I seen just before we started recording that he's getting stuck into some KFC. So fat boy Josh is coming back out, so he's a very happy man right now.
Yeah, stepping up a weight class by the sound of things. That was a pretty, it was a bit of a feast in the photo.
Yeah, there's a lot of food there, but I would expect nothing less. He earned it.
Yeah, absolutely, he has. Another guy who's earned a bit of a feast is Jack Della Maddalena, who was also in action on the card against Ramazan Emeev. He's put a tough Russian fighter away in the first round, and he got himself into another sort of pretty close submission like he did on the Contender Series. He survived an anaconda choke early. It looked pretty deep, but he managed to recover and plow through a pretty tough guy in the end. So and it was kind of interesting in the post fight. He said he knew he was going to get out of the choke. It was just going to take time. That's just a classic Jack Della Maddalena sort of line. That just such a laid back sort of cat, like the sort of guy who just would have been cool as a cucumber whilst getting pretty much the blood cut off from his brain. So another great performance from Jack Della. What do you reckon?
Yeah, obviously, getting caught in a submission like that is very, very tight. The dude stitched it up very, very quickly, and had it pretty well locked up. I A bunch of other fighters in that similar position, I don't know if they would have, been able to sort of stay composed and got out of it. And I'd imagine that guy has a squeeze on him because obviously after that, when Jack got out of submission, you could tell old mate's arms were just gone, like they were just fried. So obviously he put everything into that. So it would have been for that period of time that he was stuck in that submission, it would have been like a very, very uncomfortable and very, very shit. And I know we're all fighters and I know we're all tough, but I got to think that Jack's neck was a bit sore after that. It's all right because he won, but I feel like for sure he would have been like, whew, wiping that off a little bit, being like, oh man, that was pretty hectic. But no, obviously once he got out of it, just put on a clinic, the boxing shone through again, the body shots, just absolutely melted the guy. And then something that I noticed too when the fight started on old mate's side of his body, it was like a red square just on his body, and I don't know if he had treatment done. I don't know if there was something that was happening there because it was just really random. So I don't know if if that was compromised or if he had some things that he was trying to sort out. But obviously, Jack took notice of that because he went straight to the body work, and once he cracked old mate to the body, it kind of just melted him. And then obviously we saw him follow up and finish the fight. Yeah, he's an absolute monster, man, and he's a young dude. He's very athletic. He's a pretty decent sized welterweight. So I feel like, same sort of thing with his head coach, Ben Vickers, if they just sort of keep approaching it the way they're approaching it now and take it step by step like they are now and have it all sort of clinically planned out and the matchups increase that little bit with a degree of difficulty each time, we're going to see this dude become a superstar in this division, in a very difficult division.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was going to bring up the redness on Amib's body there. It was obviously there for everyone to see. I think it was on a lot of people's minds while he was fighting, and I wasn't sure whether he just maybe got sunburnt. That was one thing that the commentators were speculating at the time. It was like, he's obviously a Russian guy, probably hasn't seen the sun in a while. Gets out to Singapore and just lays out in the sun. But it was kind of, it was in a very concentrated spot, wasn't it? So it was kind of an odd one. And at the end, as you say, he got folded with a body shot, and so perhaps there was a bit of an issue with a rib or somewhere, something along those lines. But I guess we can only speculate. The performance was good from Jack Della, and he said he was going to have to sort of wipe off the the sweat and the sore neck and whatever, but. He can just wipe it off with some dollar bills, I think, for his cool 50 G's for his efforts in the end with the performance of the night.
Yeah, very well deserved. Very well deserved. And I like that they're sort of doing that a bit more now, the way they sort of go, everyone that finished their fight gets a bonus. Like whatever, let's just do it. So yeah, that's cool. It's cool to see, and obviously well deserved.
Absolutely. And where does Jack Della sort of sit in the division now? He's kind of fought, obviously the guy he fought last time out, I think it was Pete Rodriguez, is, again, like we've talked about, probably not up to UFC caliber. Ramazan Emeev is, obviously he's obviously a tough guy, unranked, all that sort of thing. But Jack looks a cut above the lower tier of the division, doesn't he? And the guys he's fighting at the moment are no match for him. So, where does he sit? Is he kind of on the cusp of the top 15? Should he have a top 15 opponent next? Where do you think sort of Jack Della fits in the in the welterweight mix at the moment?
Match him with Jeff Neal next. That's what I want to see. I want to see Hands of Stone versus Jack Della. That's the fight I want.
Oh,
I feel like I feel like he could do that. I feel like he could compete. That's where
Absolutely.
I feel like he sits. I feel like he could, get him in there against someone like Jeff Neal. Goes out there and puts on a similar performance. We're talking about getting this dude in versus someone else, that's a sort of well-known dude, and start making his way to sort of a title run. But yeah, I want to see that. That'd be straight violence, and I feel like Jack would be more than up to the task.
Yes, sign me up for that. That's another brilliant lockjaw matchup there. God, this guy's the matchmaker in waiting.
Yeah, if the UFC need someone to slip in, you need someone to do that for you, I can do that. I can help you out.
Absolutely. And also on the card, another performance of the night, winner was Jake Matthews. Now, he obviously took on Andre Fialho, who was seen to be a pretty big step up in competition for Jake Matthews, and I don't think either of us had high hopes for him really when we were looking at the matchup. But he looked really impressive. All his talk pre-fight was about sort of the aggression. We know that Jake Matthews, you look down his record and a lot of his fights have gone to decision. We know he's good, he's fast and he moves well and he's good at sort of shutting down his opponents and all those sorts of things. But he talked about, being aggressive and sort of finishing fights and stuff like that. And we can always see that that he had the talent, again the speed and the movement and that sort of thing. But I think he had a harder edge to his performance on the weekend. He looked kind of nasty, and he put Fialio away. Was it in the, I forget which round it was in the end. Might have been the second round perhaps. But it was a really good performance in the end. So, what do you make of Jake Matthews?
Yeah, had a bit. I guess you're right. He had a bit more intent. It seemed like with what he was doing. Obviously he's always kind of been like fast and explosive, and I think since going up to welterweight, that sort of amplified a bit more because he's not cutting that unnecessary weight. But he looked even faster in this fight. It wasn't so much. I don't think it was so much that the punches that he was throwing and they were landing. It wasn't so much even the power. It was more so just the speed at which they were landing. The power is obviously going to always be there, but just how fast he was in there and the combinations that he was putting together. I feel like that was the deciding factor for the fight, and old mate just couldn't really recover from that because he just get buzzed again very, very quickly. So obviously a standout performance. He got 50 Gs as well. Probably the biggest win and best performance of his career so far. So if that's anything to go by, whatever he's done or whatever he switched up, or maybe the fact that he's become a dad's playing a factor as well. Good on the dude. He got there and got the win. He kind of, I made it pretty clear. Like, the dude's obviously talented and you got to respect his skills, but I'm not his biggest fan, but can't knock the dude's performance. He went out there and killed it.
Yeah, he really did. And again, sort of similar to Jack Della and Josh Kulabau, he's had a really good performance on a big card, on the main card as well. So, it's only going to benefit him going forward. Yeah,
100%. So it'll be interesting to see what they're trying to do with him. And I'm starting to ask the question, how long before we see Jake Matthews versus Jack Della?
Oh, yeah, I wonder how that'd go down. Is that Aussie versus Aussie? That'd be a tough sell for maybe for the guys. It sounds like there's a bit of camaraderie between the Aussie guys, but that'd be a fun matchup.
I mean, it gets to the point where it could potentially happen. I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, ideally you wouldn't want to see that because you wouldn't want to see two Anzacs go at it, but when they don't need to, unless it's for like a shiny belt or anything like that. But that'd be an interesting fight. It'd be an interesting fight to see.
Absolutely, and we've got a bit of time up our sleeve here, so we might touch on some of the main fights as well from UFC 275. Of course, we saw Zhang Weili flatten Joanna Jędrzejczyk with a spinning back fist. There was again a pretty spectacular finish, and Joanna's hung up the gloves post fight. So brilliant career from her, real sort of pioneer of those lighter women's weight classes, and Weili Zhang sort of moves on to potentially a title shot with Carla Esparza.
Yeah, so obviously, Joanna retiring is a pretty big deal. She's an absolute beast and kind of the greatest strawweight so far in UFC history. The other girl's got some work to do. At the moment, that belt's just flip-flopping between people and has been for a while. So, she got like 6 title defenses or 6 strawweight title fights or something. So that alone should sort of say, enough to show where she's ranked in that division. Obviously, she got pretty emotional afterwards, and I saw a bunch of stuff even after that when she was doing the post-fight press conference and then leaving the arena and stuff like that. But everyone kind of, gave her sort of nothing but applause and respect and stuff like that. So it's well deserved. But yeah, Weili looked real good. I was very impressed with the adjustment she made with the wrestling side of things too. So obviously the work with Cejudo must have paid dividends, because as soon as she got to those sort of body lock positions and stuff like that, she just dragged Joanna down without much resistance and was able to do it in a very technical way. Like, for someone like me that, appreciates that sort of stuff and can kind of see, the improvements that she's made in those areas. Like, she was doing some pretty high level things, although it looked pretty simple as she just got a hold of Joanna and dragged it to the mat. There was a lot going on for that to be able to look as smooth as it did and be as easy as it did. I always try and tell it to people, if you're watching someone do anything, whether it's the boxing side of things, the kickboxing side of things, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter. If someone can be fighting someone else who's world class and make a certain movement seem simple, that means there's a bunch of other things going on. And like they're at the technical abilities at such a high level that it just looks like it's that easy. And I like using the example of when we saw GSP fight Koscheck, and I think we kind of spoke about this as well. When GSP fought Koscheck after they were an Ultimate Fighter, he pretty much defended the world title with a jab. Like that was the main weapon that he used. He just jabbed his face off. Like obviously he's a well-rounded dude and he has the wrestling, he has all the other stuff, but he pretty much jabbed Koscheck's face off all night. And if you can do that at that level, that just speaks volumes in itself. So Wei Li's obviously making those improvements. She's an absolute monster, and she's got a long career ahead of her still, I think. And she's a very, very rough matchup for Carla Esparza. Obviously, with the improvements that she's made with her wrestling now and how good she looked in there with the wrestling side of things, I feel like she's ready for a title fight now again, and she's going to fight Carla. And I see her just running through her completely, because Carla's nowhere near on the level to be able to hang on with the feet. And if she can't get it down, she's going to be in for a rough night.
Yeah, I agree. Carla Esparza's sort of a little bit of a one-trick pony, isn't she? She's sort of, obviously a really strong, well-credentialed wrestler, but, if Wei Li's sort of made the improvements in the wrestling and she can shut that down, then, it's going to be a pretty rough night at the office for Carla Esparza. Yeah,
I mean, obviously Carla's a bit older too on that, and she was the first strawweight champ in that, but she is a specialist. Let's call her that. She's a specialist. She sticks to sort of what got her to the dance, and, what got her to the dance got her albeit in a weird way, got her a belt again, got the belt back for her. So, although that fight was a bit fucking weird, I think the belt should have just been taken away, but
vacated.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, but, look at what Wei Li's been able to do in there. And, outside of getting head kicked by Rose, which is just timing, beautiful technique, and just, amazing work by Rose, she's looked pretty damn good. So I'm pretty excited to see what's ahead for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And specialist is a much better term than one-trick pony. So, thanks for offering that one. That was, Yeah, so that was much regret on my part for that one. But, we'll see how that plays out for Wei Li. But, and the co-main event was Valentina Shevchenko versus Tyler Santos. Valentina's escaped with a split decision in the end, and she's finally looked human for the first time. And I guess my question for you is, did Tyler Santos win rounds 1 and 3, or was that just me?
I thought she won for sure.
1, 2, 3. Sorry. Yeah.
I thought she won. Yeah, I thought she won all 3, the first 3 rounds. I understand Valentina speaking about it afterwards, and she's like, the first thing that they scored on striking and effective striking. And I understand she had more significant strikes. I get that, but I don't know, man. Like, watching that fight, and I'm like a massive Valentina fan too. Like, I think she's fucking amazing. So, yeah, I feel like you hit the nail on the head. She looked very human in this fight. And based on what her post-fight comments and how she's sort of taken it, I think she's obviously, as you would, because she's got the most title defenses now in women's UFC history. And, she's obviously an absolute monster and been killing it. But she's drinking the Kool-Aid, and that's very, very dangerous, because if you get in there with someone like Tyler again, who's going to, I guess she's getting surgery now, actually broken orbital from the headbutt, which is something also like, Valentina touched on, like, look at her face, look at the damage that I was able to do. Yeah, but the majority of that was from an accidental headbutt. It wasn't from you punching her in the face. Her orbital broke because you guys accidentally clashed heads. So you got to be realistic with these things. And, I think Valentina's very fortunate that she, was able to get a decision. It is what it is. We go from there. But for my money, I feel like we're going to see her have like a filler fight now, potentially, and then, because it makes sense for them to run it back. In my money, it makes sense for her and Tyler Santos to run it back. But in the meantime, if they're going to do like another fight for her, or if she wants to drop down to strawweight, or if she wants to like go fight the winner of Pena and Nunes, or I don't know. I feel like if Pena defends her belt and they want to do Valentina versus Pena, Valentina's going to smoke her. I don't even think it'll be. Yeah, I feel like, the extra bit of weight on, the extra bit of pop on the punches, I feel like she can do some damage. And obviously last time I think they did fight and she submitted her. So, I feel like, I feel like they have fought. I could have that wrong, but I feel like they did fight, and I feel like Valentina did submit her or did beat her. And obviously, Valentina's fought Amanda, and not done well, but there's an argument there that she kind of did beat her the last time they fought. The decision could have gone her way. I could see it going both ways, but I don't really like the option of her going up to bantamweight. I feel like if she's going to go and chase another belt, because she's talked about the fact that she pretty much just walks around at flyweight, I feel like she could drop down to strawweight and fight the winner of Carla and Weili. I'd love to see Weili and Valentina scrap. That'd be fucking sick.
Yeah, if she can do it, if she can get down to that weight sort of properly, then that'd absolutely be a fun
At the
fight.
moment, she's the only fighter that realistically has a chance at getting 3 belts. I feel like, it's got to be the right circumstances, because I feel like, she's seen her fight at bantamweight before, so she can obviously fight and compete at bantamweight. It's just going to have to be the right circumstance and right opponent. But then, for my money, if she can get down to strawweight and do it quite easily, fuck man, she's going to be a problem, like, for that weight class. Like, outside of Rose and Weili, if Carla or someone else like that's got the belt, she's just going to destroy them. Although Misha Tate's, gone down to flyweight now, so she's having a fight soon, and I think she's had some choice words to say, just like she did when she returned to bantamweight. She talked about going on this big run and how she was going to go and beat Amanda and beat people, and then didn't really work out. Now she's dropped down a weight division. And she's saying all these whack things about Valentina, saying how she would like beat her and stuff like that. I think she's a bit delusional, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Maybe she'll prove me wrong.
I'm always skeptical about people going down in weight classes. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of variables with it. Like, can they actually get down? And like, it's one thing to be able to suck down to the weight, but can they do it and be healthy and sort of still have the same sort of physical presence that they do in their sort of ideal or their normal weight class? I don't know. I'm always skeptical. I don't have high hopes for Misha Tate going down.
It's like anyone can make any weight. Like, you make the weight. Like, I could literally go and make bantamweight. I can do it. I'm going to mess myself up, but I can do it. And then I could sell all the Wolf tickets being like, thanks to my team, everyone doing it. This has been the easiest cut ever. We fucking killed it. But I guarantee you when I get in there, unless I am able to finish the fight in the first round, the fight's not going to go well for me after that. You're going to be compromised. Your body's going to start giving up on you and, putting you in a sort of rough position. Like, it's going to be great for the first half of the first round. Yeah, you're going to be heaps bigger, heaps stronger. You can be able to sort of impose your will a little bit, but if it doesn't work out, you don't get a finish or you don't get out of there fairly quickly, you're going to have a fucking shit time, as opposed to doing it the right way over a period of time with actual professionals and being sort of legit with yourself, that you need to be disciplined and follow what's given to you. And I feel like, I don't know. Hopefully, if that's the case, if someone like Misha Tate or Valentina or someone wants to do something like that, the fact that they are looking at doing that, hopefully they do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of doing it properly over a period of time, the 42-year-old Glover Teixeira defended his title against, he didn't defend his title, but he fought Yuri Prochazka, and he was doing well. He was sort of up on the scorecards, and eventually he got put away with I think it was 20 odd seconds to go. Yeah, and he was just kind of. He said after the fight that he'd had a tough weight cut himself, and he was kind of gassing from the body shots and from the power of Yuri. So, what did you make of Glover's performance? And of course, Yuri sort of, a bit of a smash and grab in the dying sort of embers of the fight.
Yeah, man. Obviously, congrats to Yuri for fucking finding a way to win and doing it with like barely any time left. A bit of a buzzer beater win, with a submission. First time that Glover's been submitted. Man, I'm just so bummed though. Like, fuck, I like Glover. I didn't want to see him lose. Like, I've been, like, Colby and I spoke about this. Like, he's messaged me right after the fight. He was like, "Oh man, what a fight!" And I was like, "That was a crazy fight." And he's like, "I feel kind of sad though." I'm like, "Bro," I'm like, he's like, I almost cried. I was like, I did cry. Like, I was so bummed. I don't want to see Glover lose. And it made it even worse. Like, I was holding it together. And then when he asked DC if he looked like he was 42 while he was out there, and DC said no. And then he was like, all right, then I'm going to keep going. I got so hyped, I started throwing shit around. I was like, I was happy as shit. So hopefully we can see Glover, go, and if they do a rematch, they do a rematch. If not, if they're going to do Jan and Yuri, whatever, maybe if they give Glover, because Anthony Smith had a lot to say about the fight. If he wants to run it back with Glover and get his head punched in again and have his teeth punched out of his mouth, wouldn't be opposed to seeing that. And I like Anthony Smith. I think he's a cool dude, but I feel like that's a bit silly to say that because he said some whack things about the fight. He was like, it's a cool fight and it was entertaining, but the technical stuff in the fight was all wrong. And I thought that was pretty whack to say something like that. But, you know, obviously there was some mistakes by Glover. You know, you had Yuri very, very hurt, decided to go for a guillotine, dropped to his back, and Yuri slipped out. And there was, you know, he done a few times there where it's just, which kind of must be, which says to me that it was spot on, the fact that he had a rough weight cut and it was affecting him in there, because, and like he was a bit gassed and a bit, because obviously wasn't thinking straight at times because of that, because Glover's very experienced and he's like older. He's been in the game for a long time. He's very experienced. He's got good fight IQ. He knows how to go there and win fights and perform. So, but at the same time, you know, he had him hurt and then went, I'm going to go to what I know. I don't knock the dude for trying to go for that guillotine. I just feel like maybe, yeah, in hindsight, obviously it's easy to sit and go, it wasn't the right choice, but it's just as easy the chance that he grabbed a hold of Yuri's neck. And obviously when you're in a state where you've been buzzed like that, it could have been very, very well over very quickly. And we would be sitting here going, fuck, look at Glover. He's going to fight Jan again. So yeah, and obviously Yuri is the champ now. Obviously monster performance from him as well to come back and rally up and win, because he was for sure down on the scorecards. Like he was 20 seconds away from coming out of that fight as, you know, the loser, because Glover was clearly up on the scorecards. But, you know, they both had their moments, and easily the second best light heavyweight title fight we've ever seen. Jones Gustafson's still number one for me.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, like, do you think an immediate rematch is warranted here? Just given the way that the fight panned out, like Glover was 20 odd seconds away from retaining the title. You know, it was obviously a really great fight, but then, like you were saying, you got Jan Blachowicz is kind of hanging over the sort of title picture as well. So I don't know, do you do an immediate rematch, or do you think Jan has earned his shot next?
Well, yeah, it's weird because Jan defended the belt a couple of times and then fought Glover and didn't get an immediate rematch, and then Glover fought Yuri. So I could understand if they just go with Yuri and Jan now as the next fight, and Glover kind of waits it out to see what happens, and then he slots himself in, because outside of that, the divisions, there's not much happening. I mean, there's Anthony Smith and this other Russian bloke that are fighting, and I guess they could make a case for fighting for a belt as well. So, you know, it's fucking, there's a lot happening, but not a lot happening at the same time. You know, you got someone like Paul Craig, who's maybe 2 wins off talking about fighting for a title. If he goes out there and subs another 2 people, and when we talk about that dude fighting for a belt, that's probably the way the division is at the moment. It's a bit sort of weird, but I feel like Yuri's out of all the people in the division and what's happening there, Yuri's got the most potential to go on a run now and defend the belt and cement himself as the champ and kind of go through with it. You're never gonna be able to, unless you go on like a massive run of defending the title at light heavyweight and kind of surpass John's record. You're never really going to be up to people's standards. People are always going to have this cloud over you, because they're going to be like, oh, I mean, you're good, he's great, but John Jones is better. And if John Jones was there, he wouldn't be champion. So that's rough and it's not really fair, but unfortunately at the same time, it's kind of true. The only reason we had another light heavyweight champion is because John Jones gapped it and was like, out of the division, if he sticks around, you don't get another champion until he decides to go away. So, that's just sort of rough, but also straight just the fact that shows you how incredible John Jones is. That now that Yuri's the champion, he's already had people. There's already people being like, oh, well, if he fights John Jones, he gets smoked. He's not up to John's standard, and that's pretty shit considering the dude just won a world title.
Yeah, this bar's been set pretty high, hasn't it, at light heavyweight? And even though John Jones is clearly, from the recent photos, isn't going to be making light heavyweight again anytime soon, he's still this boogeyman over the division, isn't he? That, like, it's just, people are always going to be compared to him because he never actually lost the title in the cage. So, yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but, Yuri's going to have to blaze his own trail, isn't he? He's a guy, like you say, he's a good age, he's a dangerous fighter, he's got a sort of fun style to watch, so, yeah, there's definitely potential there for him to go on a run, as you say. So, hopefully in time, the whole John Jones, the shadow of John Jones will pass, and Yuri or whoever the next sort of big champion is can kind of blaze their own trail. But we've got a few other bits and pieces to cover off. We've got Charles Joyner, who's in action this weekend in Rome. He's fighting for the ISKA World Cruiserweight Kickboxing World Title. He's fighting a guy called Matteo Ferrani, who's from Italy, obviously. For those who don't know, Joyner, I've interviewed Charles Joyner, by the way. I'll plug this again one more time. It's on the Fight News Australia YouTube channel. So to get some more info on Charles, he sort of talks about his background and his martial arts journey and all of that sort of thing. So to get some more info on that, go and see my interview. But for those who don't know, he's 26 years old. He's a former training partner of Tyson Pedro and Tai Tuivasa. He's just late last year moved to the UK. He's reeled off a couple of quick wins, and now he's sort of got this world title opportunity. But his aspirations are in MMA. He wants to eventually, and he said in the interview, I won't give away too much, but he wants to sort of make his MMA debut potentially by the end of this year, and sort of push on towards the UFC. But I think he's only been training sort of grappling and MMA for about a year, so he's probably got a bit of time to go before he sort of makes it to a UFC sort of level. But for now, he's got a ISKA world title kickboxing opportunity. So yeah, what do you know about Charles Joyner, and what do you think of the kickboxing chances?
Yeah, it was an interesting chat, the one you did with him. So it was cool to sort of hear him sort of break things down a little bit. He's obviously a very talented martial artist in the striking side of things. Dude's a beast, and he's a big guy, very tall, very long, very rangy. So I'm excited to sort of see how this fight goes on. Obviously, it'd be dope to see him go out there and win this sort of world title. And then, like you said, if that's the sort of aspiration to go into the MMA side of things, it's not a bad thing to have on your resume to carry over into the MMA world. That you have a kickboxing world title up your sleeve. And then it's also going to, as a mental thing, when you're getting in there with the guys in the MMA side of things, it's going to mess with them a little bit, man. It's going to play a factor. Like if you're standing across from someone who's got a kickboxing world title, and they're obviously very experienced in that realm, and it's going to play a factor. We're going to see these dudes kind of want to really find that one path to victory in being on the grappling and the wrestling. And if you can defensively keep it standing, he's going to beat the shit out of a lot of dudes.
Absolutely, yeah. And the opponent, Ferrani, is it's from what I can tell, seems to be sort of fairly well known in Italy. And if you look down Charles's social media, there's a lot of comments from Italian people, sort of leaving sort of, I guess, nasty comments on all of his pictures and reels and that sort of thing that he puts on there. So he's obviously got a bit of backing of the locals because the fight is in Rome. But I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Charles is undefeated. He's full of confidence, 15-0. But he's only been training for 6 years as well, which is kind of an interesting little sort of sidebar there. So I believe that one's going to be it's under the what's the promotion's called Octagon with a K, and it's streaming on DAZN. So if anyone wants to watch it, look it up and have a look at Charles Joyner. But also in action this weekend, we've got Rob Wilkinson. He's back in the he's back in the PFL on the 18th. He's taking on Victor Pesta, so it's his second round fight. So obviously this is the last fight before the playoffs, and a stoppage win would basically guarantee Rob Wilkinson passage through to the playoffs. Victor Pesta, we know, got beaten by Omari Akhmedov in his first round fight in pretty spectacular fashion. He got flatlined with a pretty heavy punch in the end. So we don't know what sort of state Pesta's going to be in, but what we do know is that he's going to need a finish. He needs a first round finish to have any chance of making the playoffs here. So he's going to have to come out fast and try and put Rob Wilkinson away, and he's going to have to put himself into the fire. So yeah, what do you reckon of Rob Wilkinson's chances of putting Victor Pesta away and booking his place in the playoffs?
Bet the house on a TKO finish. If you got a betting app that you use or partner or whatever the fuck you want to call it, bet money on him to win by TKO finish, TKO KO, chuck your money on that. That's what's going to happen. This kid's going to get bashed. Rob's a big dude, hits very hard. This guy just got flatlined not too long ago, so he's compromised. The chin's gonna get tested, and unfortunately, it's not going to hold up. Shout out to Rob though, because obviously Chris Drummond's over there to help corner him, and he's over there at the moment because obviously, and he's fighting on Eternal as well, July 16th. He's in the action. You might have heard, and another person who's in action on that night is me. So Chris and I are going to come and get some wins, but. I want to see the boys do well, smash out this second round fight, book a spot in the playoffs and see him work his way towards $1 million and potentially more than likely fight, unless they fight before the final. The guy that was in the UFC that won it last year escapes my mind right now.
Yeah, I've forgotten his name too.
Oh mate, the Brazilian bloke. If you know who it is.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember his name. Like I literally just watched one of his fights from the PFL.
Yep, I literally was just talking about this guy the other day. Antonio Carlos Jr.
That's
there
it.
you
Man.
go.
That's it.
You,
That's the one.
Google. Yeah, so yeah, we cleared that one up. Yep, well, pretty much saved our bacon there.
Doesn't he have a weird fight name too? Isn't it something weird? I swear he's got a weird fight name.
Yeah,
it's like Shoeface or something. Or I think it's something weird like Shoeface.
It is Shoeface. There you go.
Oh,
Cara de Sapato, which translates to Shoeface.
Shoeface. Fucking, how's the brain on all lockjaw? Fucking hell.
Fuck, this guy knows everything.
Couldn't remember his name.
I don't even know why I'm here. You could just be dropping knowledge bombs.
Couldn't remember his name, but I could remember his fight name. That's fucking weird. There you go.
Yeah, well, yeah. Hopefully, they get matched in the finals, and Rob plants a shoe in Antonio Carlos Jr.'s face.
Hopefully he wins that $1 million, and then he's off to the races, and he start defending that. Keep carries that on, kind of a la Kayla Harrison. Just keep fighting, keep going through the playoffs, keep winning the milli.
7-figure checks. Yeah, and so I guess the interesting thing is, like, Rob Wilkinson, he's coming from the fight against Brucey Soto last time around, who's fought most of his career at welterweight and then stepped up to light heavyweight. Victor Pesta's the opposite, right? He's fought most of his career, or he's fought as high as heavyweight. So, I think Rob has sort of said in some interviews during the week that, he's kind of going to be the smaller guy for probably the first time in his career, right? He's fought most of his career at middleweight, where he's obviously massive for the weight class. You only have to look at him now and see how big Rob Wilkinson is. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he sort of deals with the size. But, yeah, like you say, I think Victor Pesta's going to come, and I think he's going to get stopped. And, yeah. So Rob Wilkinson through to the playoffs, which is fun because I think he's going to be a real problem for anyone in the PFL.
Yeah, I don't see him not being able to hang with anyone that's in that sort of weight division in the PFL. I feel like he slots in quite well.
Absolutely, and just some other news that's just kind of dropped in the last couple of days. It's sort of come out that Jamel Charlo and Tim Tszyu have agreed a deal to fight for obviously all of their world titles, but Tim Tszyu obviously the WBO mandatory. But it looks like there might be some legal proceedings from the Russian fella. His name has escaped me. I don't think I've got it in my notes there. There's a Russian guy who's the mandatory for the IBF. He's been mandatory since 2019. Oh. So sounds like there's going to be some... He's been paid some step-aside money before, apparently, but this time he's had enough. He wants the fight. So Jamel Charlo's either going to have to fight him or get a sort of a stay from the IBF, which might be difficult after almost 3 years as a mandatory, or he might have to vacate the belt and fight Tim Tszyu. But yeah, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, that's a weird situation to be in, and that's the fucking stupid side of boxing, that they have all these different sanctioning bodies and all the belts, and then you have all these mandatory challenges and all this sort of shit like that. It's just like, fuck, man. I get it, but at the same time, it's just mad annoying. So. Hopefully they can figure it out and we can sort of see Timmy Tszyu get his world title opportunity. That's unfortunate for that Russian bloke that he hasn't had a chance to fight for a world title and has been waiting this long and been asked to kind of just chill out. But at the end of the day, I ain't Russian, I'm Australian, so fuck that guy. I want to see Tim Tszyu fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all do. And it's like it's a messy situation, and boxing is just a messy sport with all the sanctioning
and
bodies.
Also, I'm Team Ukraine anyway. We're not vibing with Russia at the moment.
Yes, there is that. So, hopefully, even though Tim Tszyu is obviously of Russian heritage, but
we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that.
We'll cut that out. Actually, cut it out. It's all right. It's irrelevant. So I'm sorry I even said it. All right, I'm sorry.
Costa Tszyu. I don't even know who that is.
Costa who? Sorry.
Yeah. No. See. No idea.
Exactly. Now we've got to get to. We were also going to cover off Justice Hooney versus Joe Goodall. It's a big sort of grudge match in boxing. It's obviously some heavy implications. The winner of the fight's going to sort of move into the top 15 in the heavyweight division, under I think it was 3 of the sanctioning bodies.
Yeah.
We have had a delay in recording this podcast, so the fight will be going on actually as we're speaking right now. So what we'll do is we'll carry it over for next week. We'll recap the fight. So we'll carry it. So we'll recap it in episode 20. So apologies, everyone. Didn't sort of say this off the top, but apologies for the delay. In this one coming out, it's going to be a day late. I was going to say any complaints can be directed to Lockjaw. So so that's at Lockjaw MMA for any complaints or any sort of death threats or anything like that. No, we don't really want that. But we've got to get to a fan question as well. This one's a fun one, actually. The question comes from Jonathan Charles. So thanks, Jonathan, for listening and sending through the question. Jonathan's question is, should judges in MMA be limited to only being former fighters or who have competed in the sport? So it's an interesting sort of talking point. Obviously, judging is a real sort of common talking point in mixed martial arts. So what do you reckon? Should they only be former fighters who have actually competed?
100%. But I mean, in saying that right off the bat, I just want to say that isn't just going to suddenly make every decision great and make sense. Like, you're still going to get rough decisions, because at the end of the day, even though if you were to use only fighters who fought at a pro level and had some significant experience, you're still going to have, they're going to have preferences. They're going to have things that sort of stick out to them. So you're still going to occasionally you are going to get decisions that are still going to be a bit iffy, but I feel like it's going to happen a lot less than what it is now. That's just a pure fact, because the people that are going to be judging the fights are going to be people who've been in there, who, are experienced in the sport, who obviously are knowledgeable in the sport. So I feel like it's going to remove a lot of that off the table. But, I feel like it's never going to be something that you're going to completely fix and you're going to have this magical solution for. But for sure, I don't get how we don't have people who competed in the sport, or at least have been involved in the sport in some capacity for their whole lives, as the judges for the sport at the top level. It's very weird to me that some of these people get to judge fights and then continually get to judge fights because they work for the commissions that they work for, and the UFC kind of doesn't have a say. But unless it's sort of very, very egregious and like so obviously wrong that they can kind of get rid of them. I had a nice chat with a couple of people who sort of dealt with the UFC and sort of been involved at that level. And, they tell me that after these events, they sit down with all the officials and referees and judges and everyone, and you have to justify to the commission and to the UFC your decision making and why you made your decisions. So, for example, when Herb Dean messed up the Robbie Lawler-Askren fight, for example, where he looked like he was out, but he wasn't out, blah, 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 blah. So now Herb had to go sit down and sort of justify his decision making after that. He had to sort of break it down and go, okay, here's why this happened. Here's this is why I made the decision I made. So if they're doing that, then how come we are still seeing some of these people who are involved in these shitty decisions allowed to be able to judge fights? So yeah, it's going to be a weird thing that's, I guess, always going to be part of the sport, but I feel like it's going to be massively reduced if you made it people who are former fighters who fought at a pro level and had decent experience.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think a lot of the judges, particularly over in the US, are sort of boxing transplants, and I think they can only carry sort of so many people in the organisation, right? So I think it's one of those things where it's going to take a little bit of time for those sorts of actual sort of experienced MMA people to come through in judging, and whether that's even a pathway that former fighters are even pursuing. A lot of former fighters, they go into teaching and things like that, coaching. I feel like, at the moment there are people that are judges in these commissions and things like that, and it's like any job, you have to wait for someone else to move on before you can sort of get your own opportunity. But over here in Australia, I think they have trouble finding the right sort of people, and I actually got down the rabbit hole myself recently. I was looking into sort of doing some judging myself, or at least just doing a course in judging. And I kind of thought, it'd be kind of fun to be involved in it, sort of see see what it's like, sort of, watch fights, judge fights, that sort of thing, which is obviously the exact opposite of what most people would really be wanting as a fucking journalist coming in and being a judge. But also, I wanted to sort of do the course just for my own knowledge, it'd just make me a better analyst, better writer, and all those sorts of things. So I got talking to a guy from a commission down here. I can't remember his name, but he was basically saying that you have to do like a course or like a seminar sort of thing in judging, and then you sort of you can apply to the commission. You sort of judge some amateur fights and that sort of thing, and then you sort of do like shadow judging. So you just kind of shadow an actual judge at a professional level and sort of work your way up the ranks that way. But to do the course, you have to be. He basically said that you would have to be at least a blue belt in jiu-jitsu to pass the course, because there's like a practical component, a practical jiu-jitsu component. So you'd have to be able to demonstrate jiu-jitsu techniques, because they want to make sure that people actually do understand the techniques and what it's like to be in those positions and all of those sorts of things. Now, what I thought was a little bit backwards about it, and I'll tell you why, is that there was no sort of requirement for any sort of striking background. Now, I come from a striking background myself, right? So, I understand what it's like to be punched in the face and knocked out and all those sorts of, punched and kicked and all those sorts of things. But there was no sort of striking requirement. He basically kind of said to me, like, if you've got a striking background, then maybe you should sort of look into a Muay Thai or boxing sort of seminar or pathway into judging. And that sort of seemed a bit backwards to me. And then, I went to demolition. All right, I'll use that as an example, because there was a couple of dodgy decisions, and no one got robbed. They were split decisions. They went to the right fighter, as far as I was concerned, and as far as people that were sort of sitting nearby were concerned as well. They went to the right fighter, but they were split decisions that were, there was one judge, and I don't know if it was the same one over and over, but there was one judge that was obviously giving the fight sort of just to the wrong person when they were sort of clearly hadn't won the fight. And there were fights in which the fighter that sort of got one of the three scorecards had a lot of sort of cage control time. They was kind of just had their opponent pressed up against the cage, but really struggled standing up and didn't actually manage to sort of complete any takedowns. So for me, I don't know if, and again, I don't know who the judges were on the night, but I wonder whether perhaps there was a judge there with a grappling background who didn't really understand what they were looking at in the striking realm. They look at someone who's controlling their opponent against the cage. Now, obviously, the number one criteria is effective striking and effective grappling, right? But I don't think. I don't know, and you could probably help me out here, but I don't think that sort of holding someone against the cage, if you don't actually complete a takedown, I don't know that that's necessarily effective grappling. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree. If you're just sort of holding someone up against the fence and not really taking them down or not really doing much damage, like, what are we doing here? I mean, I'd like to use, who was it? It was on an Eternal card earlier in the year. We saw Jamie Edenden fight, I think her name's Sarah Collins. I think she's based down in Melbourne. She had a lot of control up against the fence, just pressing Jamie up against the fence. Wasn't really doing much damage. And when they were separated, Jamie Edenden was punching her face off. So, again, she got a couple takedowns, but the majority of the control time was just up against the fence. So I don't think you win the fight off that. I mean, and I'm a guy that loves to wrestle and grapple and sort of do that to people and sort of make them wilt. But, there's got to be an intent. There's got to be a direct pathway that you're trying to go down with the action. So I feel like I have to agree with you. If you're just, if someone's doing more damage and, they're kind of having a bit more success and all you're really doing is just controlling them up against the fence, it's kind of like, I don't know, for my money, you shouldn't really get to win off that. At the same time, I do understand though, I think, Rogan touched on this recently again, if someone's able to take you down and hold you on the ground, and you can't get up, and even if they're not doing much damage, if you just can't get up and improve your position, well, I understand it's like, fuck, there's an argument there, you go, okay, well, that dude wins, because there's no referee there. Eventually, if you can't get up, you're fucked. That's just how it is. But when we're talking about that middle ground where it's just up against the fence, you're just being held against the fence. In that scenario, it's a bit different, because the fence is kind of the fence is an unrealistic hindrance that wouldn't be the factor normally, if you know what I mean. If I've taken you down, I've got you on the ground and you can't get up, well, that's on you, because it's just you and me on the ground. But if I'm forcing you against the fence and I'm stopping you from being able to move and I'm utilizing the fence to be able to do that, it's a bit different, if you know what I mean. So it's a weird argument, but I kind of think that if someone's punching your face off and you're just kind of then holding them against the cage, and then the next round starts and they're punching your face off and you just hold them against the cage, but there's no damage or sort of intent, then I don't know if you can win off that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's right. I think the measure of success when you're up against the cage is really whether you've taken someone down or not, unless you're sort of grabbing a standing submission or something like that. But I think really what the intent is when you got someone up against the cage is to eventually complete a takedown. And
Like,
if you don't, then it hasn't worked.
I don't care if you're controlling someone up against the fence for 3 minutes, but if it leads to you taking them down, or in that 3 minutes you're landing sort of damaging punches or knees or elbows or kicks, whatever, then fuck yeah, I don't care. Yeah, it's sick. If you're holding someone up against the fence and obviously they're defending and you're just trying to find your moment and pick your spot and get the sort of desired outcome, if you got them there for 3 minutes, but eventually it leads to a takedown, and then once you've taken them down, there's an intent there, and there's, you submit them, or you're doing damage from the top position, or you're able to sort of, break them down or do that, then that's completely different. I'll watch that all day long, and I'll support that. I'll say that person won all day long, but just to sort of stay staggered up against the fence is a bit weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not trying to make this like they're discriminating against strikers or anything like that, because I do understand that there is a couple of other things at play, right? Like, because obviously we know that sort of the genesis of MMA was really Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So it is extremely important to have an understanding of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if you're going to judge mixed martial arts fights. Like, that's kind of the foundation sort of I guess martial art in mixed martial arts. So that's it is an important thing, and so it's a good thing that they do sort of zero in on that. And also, I think the commissions, they have trouble finding the right people to sort of judge these contests. I think they have trouble finding officials and things like that. So maybe if they sort of tighten the criteria too much, they might be sort of squeezing out people and making it even harder for themselves to find the right people. But to circle back to sort of Jonathan's question, I think there is some utility in the judges being made up of former fighters. Just purely because, like I was sort of referring to there, they understand exactly. Like, they understand every element of the fight, right? So there's not going to be anything that's going to be sort of discriminated against in their judging. So they understand what it's like to be punched. They understand what it's like to be choked. They understand what's effective and what isn't. What's sort of what's kind of just like someone taking a break, and what's someone advancing their position. They know exactly what they're looking at. Whether they need to be actual sort of fighters, I don't know. I don't know, but I think it's probably an easy way to sort of quantify whether someone is actually qualified or not, is if they have competed in mixed martial arts. Because like, you could, I don't know, I could probably ring up and say, hey, I've done fucking 40 hours of jiu-jitsu down at fucking Joe Blow's gym or something, which would be a complete lie. But who knows? I think there's just sort of room for a bit of fuckery there if if it's just people that have trained. But I don't know, if you've got like a belt level in some sort of striking art. I'm not that I'm a fan of belts in striking, but if you've got some sort of maybe striking experience and maybe a belt in jiu-jitsu, maybe but I guess you would have to have some experience in all of the arts, I think is the crux of it. And I think so, yeah, for Jonathan's question, I think I'm not 100% sure whether it would be sort of narrowing the pool too much if they had to exclusively be ex-MMA fighters, but they should certainly have some experience in all aspects, I would have thought, not just sort of one or the other.
At the very least, you needed to have been punched in the face. That should be like the minimum criteria. Someone has had to have punched you in the face with intent for you to be able to judge fighting.
Yeah, that's probably a criteria, and I don't know, maybe they could sort of build that into the course. You could just punch each other in the face just to get a feel for it. I don't know, but no, I think some experience, some relevant experience in all of the arts should certainly be a criteria, and hopefully there comes a time when that is actually a criteria for being a judge in mixed martial arts, and maybe it can tidy up some of the decisions. And like you say, there's a human element to judging, and mixed martial arts is a sport with just so many variables that the fights are open to interpretation. We disagree sometimes, when we're sort of breaking down fights on here, and people on social media, like with Jacob Malkoon and Brendan Allen, there'll be people all over the world that are disagreeing. And if you go to MMAdecisions.com, the media is pretty much split on that fight as well. So there's a lot of interpretation. So there's always going to be some dodgy decisions, or decisions that people don't agree with, but it might sort of circumvent some of them at least.
Yeah, I mean, in some small way, and that's kind of... But yeah, it's going to be a time thing, like you said. I don't know, it's not going to be a quick solution.
Not at all. But, what will be a quick solution is episode 20 of Fight Talk Down Under. We're going to be, recording that one in just under a week's time. So, we will be recapping all the fights we just previewed, as well as Justice Hooney versus Joe Goodall. And we'll cover all the local news and promotions and answer another fan question and all that sort of stuff. So, in the meantime, send us through all your fan questions. Our details are below at Dan Meehan MMA on Twitter, at Lockjaw MMA on Instagram. Can you hear me?
Yeah. How's that? Right at the end, we have some technical difficulties.
Yeah, we fucking made it this far, and then we had technical difficulties. I was having all kinds of problems before we started recording, and then we got right to the end when I was doing all my important shameless plugs, and fucking something's blown up. So there you go.
Stitch up.
Absolute stitch up. But what won't be a stitch up is if you like and subscribe YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Fight News Australia. Of course, you've already done that. But more importantly than that, we are now on the Instagram finally. So welcome to 2012 or whenever Instagram became a thing, but it's at Fight Talk Down Under. So give us a follow on there. There's going to be lots of fun stuff on there. I've given Lockjaw the reins there for better or worse. So a little bit nervous about that, but it should be fun anyway to see what goes down on there and see how often I get roasted on the Instagram page. So again at Fight Talk Down Under on Instagram, give us a follow. Check that one out, and for more good content. I'm almost done, guys. For more good content, stay tuned to Fight News Australia YouTube channel. I've of course got my interview with Charles Joyner, which has just gone up, and I'll be releasing an interview with Isaac Hardman this Friday.
Yeah.
So it's always a fun one, always a fun interview. Isaac Hardman. So he goes in deep about the Zarafa fight, and he's of course fighting Bo Hartis on July 2nd. So keep an eye out for that one. And of course, Elliot Compton will be early next week as well. He's making his MMA debut at Beatdown Promotions 1 on July 9th. So Lockjaw, what have you got to follow on from all that bullshit?
Obviously the Instagram page is the thing now, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. Obviously, everyone knows I like to get involved, make some memes, roast some people, do some stuff. Ain't nobody safe, so we'll see what happens. But it's gonna be fun. We're just gonna keep using that as an avenue to promote all this and promote everything fun about the stuff that we're doing. But other than that, we're less than 5 weeks out from Eternal in the Gold Coast, July 16th. If you're going to be in the Gold Coast, get your tickets, sort that shit out. If you don't have your Neds account sorted out yet, do that too. Start getting ready to bet some money on some fights. Cut the countdown's on until I'm back in the cage, co-main event, doing what I need to be doing. So I'm excited.
I gotta watch it. You never know what might stop you. Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all.